My name is Jamie Christine, and I am a spiritual life coach, author, and entrepreneur, and welcome to Transcend, where I hope to raise vibration, expand consciousness, and spiritual awareness by talking about anything metaphysical, spiritual, quantum, philosophical, and anything in between. And today, I have my very best friend, Ted Smith, who is also an author of a new book called Healthy Me, Happy We. And I'm really excited to talk to him today, especially because tomorrow's Valentine's Day, which kind of makes this a little extra cheesy. But I've been excited about talking about relationships and all kinds of topics in that subject for a while now. And with your background and your experiences and everything that inspired your book, I think this being Valentine's Day weekend is a perfect time to talk about these kinds of things and get you a little awareness raised about this book that you wrote, which
Absolutely.
is awesome.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah. So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Just tell me about your background a little bit and what inspired you to write this book.
Okay, will do. Hi everyone. My name is Ted Smith. It's good to be here with you today, Jamie. So my book, again, is called Healthy Me, Happy We, and it's all about transforming and cultivating healthy relationships with yourself and with other people. I was in a 15-year abusive relationship with an alcoholic narcissist, and while that journey was full of challenges, we'll talk about some of those today, it allowed me to have this experience that I can now share with the world to hopefully help people recognize the abusive and or addictive behaviors that they have in their relationships and really start to look within to see how they can interact with both themselves and other people to create those healthy relationships.
Yeah, I love that. I love that the main takeaway from your book is the fact that we've got to have that healthy relationship with ourselves first and foremost. And that really, I got to be one of the beta readers of the book, so I got a little glimpse into what the beginning stage is. I can't wait to read it as a complete project. But yeah, I just loved that. In order, you just can't have a healthy relationship with anybody if you're not right with yourself.
Absolutely.
And I feel like there's a problem in our society of a lot of people are looking for that completion of them, like. Well, actually, do you want to share with them what your original title was going to be?
I was going to say that. So, fun fact, for the longest time, I thought that the title of my book was going to be I Completely, because it's the opposite of the entire idea of what you hear, out on the street is my wife completes me or my husband completes me. He or she is my other half. Which is bullshit. And
Yes.
That's what I wanted to convey in the book, but I thought Healthy Me, Happy We is a little more, it's easier to kind of grasp the concept just from the title of the book, because it helps people understand that a healthy me allows for that healthy, happy relationship with someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And your book does talk mostly about relationships.
Yep.
And yeah, so it makes more sense that the title would be encompassing both, that relationship with yourself and relationship with others, and how to make both a healthy experience. But yes, that's the thing I've noticed with society is so many people are just looking for their other half.
Yep.
There is no other half to you. You are a whole person in and of yourself, all by yourself.
Right. And
I think part of our journey here on earth is to discover that wholeness within ourselves. And when you discover that you complete you, then you're opening that door to a healthier, happier relationship.
Yeah. One of the things that I've found in the work I've been doing in the last year and a half to 2 years is so many people look to another person to feel whole. And I'm going to butcher the quote, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it's in my book. It's this idea that I always thought that I needed to find that perfect person. But in reality, it's about becoming that perfect person.
I love that.
And it's so true. By becoming the person that you want to be with for the rest of your life, you then put out that energy to attract that perfect person that you're looking for.
Yeah.
But we run into this danger that, you know, these Prince Charming stories that exist, somebody's just going to magically appear and change everything for us. But in reality, in order to attract that person, we really have to dive in and do that work on ourselves first.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I mean, that's basically the law of attraction.
Yep.
And I'm a huge believer in the law of attraction. I have been ever since it was brought to my attention, probably at 12 or 13 years old. And I feel like I have utilized that throughout my life and have proven that the law of attraction is a very real thing. And it only makes sense that whatever energy you hold within yourself is the kind of energy you're going to attract. So if you have an unhealthy relationship with yourself, you're going to continue to attract unhealthy relationships with others.
Yep.
And once you put yourself in that energy of a healthy relationship with yourself, that you do deserve the best. You do how you deserve to be treated, how you deserve to be talked to, how you deserve to interact with each other. That kind of person is going to be attracted to you, because those like energies attract.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what happened to me. You know, in the months and years leading up to beginning that 15-year relationship, I had a really unhealthy, abusive relationship with myself. I went through a lot of shameful experiences and trying to figure out my sexuality. And because of all that abuse that I put onto myself, lo and behold, I attracted someone who treated me exactly like I treated myself.
Yeah. So I feel like I want to pause and give a little bit of backstory about how we know each other.
Yeah.
So Ted's actually my gay ex-boyfriend.
Hey.
And so I love that we both started our journey of relationships in general together.
Yep.
You were my first relationship and I was your first relationship, and we kind of set the groundwork for what relationships are in a way through our own individual experiences. And oh my gosh, that's the one thing that really blew my mind when I was reading that part about us in your book. I don't think I ever really realized what your perspective of you telling me you might be gay was in that time, because I was experiencing it through my perspective.
Right.
And mine was, you know, shoot, I was what, 15, 16, something like that.
14, no.
Was it? Oh my gosh,
14,
yeah.
15, yeah.
Somewhere in that like early teenage.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so we were early teens, and you know, that teenage puppy love thing. I was in love. I found the love of my life. I spent the rest of my life with him. And then he tells me he prefers the other sex. And I'm like, what do I do with this?
Sorry.
But I never put myself in your shoes. That me freaking out, oh my God, the love of my life told me that I can't be the love of his life, or however this works, you know, whatever my processing was at 15 years old. I never put myself in your shoes, that my reaction to you was taken as rejection. And that just built upon your shame of yourself and your guilt and all those emotions that you had going on inside of you. So it's just, it's just really amazing to me. And a great reminder too of how two different perspectives are coming into a relationship, no matter what the relationship is. You know, that was our story. But I think that element is missing in a lot of other people's relationships, where you forget we are two separate individual people with two separate perceptions, lenses that we're looking through, and experiences in life, coming from two totally different backgrounds too. So, you know, I was talking to a friend earlier about this, that our reality is defined by all the experiences that we've had up until this point. So your reality has been what it is, and my reality was what it was. We've got these two people coming together in this relationship, trying to create our own reality, and then poof, this gets thrown into the mix, and then we carry that experience with us. So now I'm starting to wonder if I created that shame and guilt within yourself that you carried into your next relationship.
No, absolutely not. I mean, we were, 13 and 14 at the time, but we all have childhood traumatic experiences as well, which is something I go into my book as well. That's something I've learned a lot about in the last year and a half, that even if our childhoods are relatively good, we all have these experiences, whether it's being forgotten at a store, or witnessing a car accident, or a kid in your class who calls you stupid and ugly. Like, those things stick with us, and we create new beliefs about ourselves that then carry on for the rest of our lives. And you know, the various things, I can't think of an example, a short example right now, but there's a reason that you and I attracted ourselves to each other, and that shame and guilt and things that I felt about myself, that was not from you. It's all about it, you know, that comes from childhood.
And now that you say that, actually, we do have similar backstories when it comes to being that social misfit in school, because we were both raised Catholic. We both went to a small town Catholic school, and you and I were both just kind of that misfit personality. We didn't fit in, and I was that weirdo geeky girl that didn't wear all the popular clothes or watch all the popular TV shows, and just was kind of rejected by the popular crowd. And I guess you probably...
I was the feminine boy who couldn't freaking throw a ball to save his life, so I just couldn't fit in with the other boys in my class because I wasn't athletic. And obviously we had different sexual preferences as well. So that
you and I have the same sexual preference.
Well, right. But those were some challenges as well.
Yeah, well, and then we did have our gifts that did kind of carry us along. I was kind of established as the class artist, and that's really what kept me afloat, that I had any value whatsoever. And you were always ridiculously smart, and everyone knew Ted was the smart guy. So hopefully that boosted your self-esteem and your self-confidence to keep you kind of afloat too. Yeah. So luckily we had that going for us, because I don't know, my self-esteem was pretty tanked by the time I got into high school, because and really all I had to stand on was I'm good at art, yay. And you probably had.
You're really freaking good at art. So.
You're really freaking smart. But there's so much more to us than that.
Right.
And I lost sight of what good there also was in me, that I let those kids in class pretty much destroy. And I don't know, are you still working on your self-esteem? Because I know I am.
Oh yeah, it's an ongoing process for sure. You know, I struggled with self-confidence a lot, but then also being in a 15-year relationship where that confidence was constantly kind of beaten up. So the last year and a half to 2 years, it's really been a process for me to accept compliments from other people. I mean, a lot of people struggle with, you look good today. No, like, I don't know, I just threw this on. Like, say thank you. Thank you, it's true. You know, and so like to get to that place of feeling as good about ourselves as other people view us. Yes. And that is hard. We are in a society where I think that's hard for everybody, because everybody struggles with that. And then that brings us back to this relationship issue where we're looking for that partner who's going to build that up for us. And we've given them all of our power. And then when you're stuck in an abusive relationship, it destroys it even more. Right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I wanna kind of dive into, I guess, a little bit of my backstory too. I'm divorced, and I'm really grateful to say I did not go through years of abuse like you did. But I can definitely relate to giving away that power within myself. So luckily, I was with somebody who was probably just as lost as I am, really. We got together under terrible circumstances, but in the time, in the moment, you know, we were young 20-somethings, and it just worked. And his history and his experiences and the losses that he has endured in his life led him to the mindset that he had, which was, I have to get married, and I have to have kids, and I have to mark all these things off my list before X, Y, and Z deadline. And me, in this place of, I'm not valuable, I'm not worth anything, I can't bring any kind of good to the world, you know, this shot self-esteem, met this guy who's got this ticking time bomb to not mark all these things off his list, and he wants me. Oh my gosh. This guy wants me, I'm wanted, I'm needed, I'm interesting, I'm worth something, I'm valuable. I ate that up. And I think we both kind of got lost in not really being self-aware, not really being able to consciously look at what kind of a future we're setting ourselves up for. And we didn't have any life experience under our belts either. We don't know what it's like to be parents. We don't know what it's like to be homeowners. There's all these things, in the 3D that you don't really know anything about until you experience it, and you get so sucked into it too. And that was kind of the problem. We get sucked into this material aspect of living and marking all these things off the list that, you're supposed to get married, and you're supposed to have kids, and you're supposed to have the 2 cars and the house with the white picket fence. And you forget that there's so much more to you than all that physical material bullshit, basically.
So what was it that helped you to start remembering?
A series of events. I know one thing that really kind of kick-started my awakening was a traumatic birth with my first son. And that was the kicker for me. I was in such a that was my dark night of the soul. I was in a really bad place then. I kind of had no will to live. One thing that kept me going was the fact that I felt like my kid needed a mother. I wanted to leave my husband because I was starting to realize that this relationship isn't what I want for the rest of my life. This is not the kind of person I want to be with for the rest of my life. This isn't the life I want for the rest of my life. And I just kept being driven down into this darkness further and further until finally I was like, okay, if I'm going to keep going, I've got to get help. So that's when I went to counseling. I made some diet changes, I made some exercise lifestyle changes, stuff like that on the surface to make my body healthier. But it's all in the mind and the work that you do on the emotions. And I really, really worked hard. And yeah, you're aware of that journey. Working with a counselor who really helps push you into those deep, dark crevices of the soul and shine light on them and start making amends with some of that shit that happened to you to where you can get yourself to a place where you can feel grateful. I actually got to a place where I felt grateful for that trauma because of the person that I had become, and I was proud of myself. So I had done all this work and I had grown, and I was starting to realize there's so much more to life than the house and the kids and the cars and the jobs and the things. And he wasn't on the same page with me about that. He had his goals and he had his expectations and he had his lifestyle, and I had mine. And just I was feeling more and more unfulfilled in that aspect. And yeah, one thing led to another. There's life circumstances that really kicked me awake, and we don't need to get into all the nitty-gritty of that, but ultimately I remember my counselor asking me, look at the last 5 years of your life. Do you want the next 5 years to look like this? And I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And it just really started getting me thinking about relationships in general. I know a lot of people kind of throw at you, stay together for the kids. It's better for kids to have a mom and a dad to raise them. But really, another counselor of mine said too that it's better for kids to come from a broken home than to live in a broken home. And that was kind of the biggest eye-openers too. And I realized he and I are going to have to go through an entire personality overhaul in order for us to be compatible and for this to work.
Right.
And you can't ask a person to do that.
Yeah.
So
It worked for you for a period of time to stay together, but at some point when you're on this trajectory of growing together kind of at the same rate, but eventually you were kind of splitting off from him,
Yeah.
so it just wasn't a good energetic fit any longer.
yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, but I'm really so grateful that I made the decision that I made, and he seems happier now. He found somebody who's more compatible with him, who'll give him that life out in the country with the animals and the things I didn't want.
Yeah.
And our boys are definitely happier because of it. So
We can be grateful for those extremely challenging experiences. I'm very grateful for my rock bottom.
yeah,
It's what completely transformed my life.
yeah,
My ex-husband ended up in the ICU for a week going through alcohol withdrawal, and I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone, but it's finally what gave me the wake-up call that I needed to realize that what I was doing with my life was no longer working.
yeah.
So that's when I discovered therapy. That's when I discovered Al-Anon, and really started to do the work on myself. And it was 3 months later that I realized that I'm not going to tolerate this abuse anymore in any case.
Yeah.
It's pretty actually incredible how quickly things can change when we finally wake up and realize that what we're doing with our lives is not really working.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it wasn't that long ago that you came over and filled me in on everything that had happened, the whole ICU experience and everything at the start of your journey. And your transformation is mind-blowing, watching you go from that rock bottom. And I'm really grateful that I got to witness this caterpillar to butterfly metamorphosis that you went through. Like, it was so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And inspiring, because everybody has that caterpillar to butterfly within them. And there is actually a quote that I really like, that there's nothing about a caterpillar when you look at it that says it's going to become a butterfly. Like, you have no idea what kind of beauty is in you, what kind of power is in you that you can transform into until you make that change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned like the gratitude for witnessing my experience, because that's something that brings me the most joy, is witnessing the journeys of other people
Me
that
too.
I've met through group therapy and the coaching programs that I'm a part of. Like, seeing where people come from and what they transform into is, like you said, inspiring.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big reasons I wrote this book, is I'm trying to not take the journey for my readers, but allow them to have that experience for themselves.
Yeah.
Because life is really freaking great when you focus on that healthy relationship with yourself, and everything else just kind of falls into place after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think I know one of your goals with the book was to kind of talk to the you of 5 years ago, who was stuck in the throes of that unhealthy relationship, and for this to be the catalyst of that wake-up call. So do you think you're gonna, because I constantly wonder, like, do you have to just go through it yourself?
Right. Well, that's
and how
the
do you
thing.
wake a person up?
I hope it can fall in the right people's laps, for them to at least to just have that glimmer of, oh my God, this guy is writing about my life. And not everybody is with an abuser or an alcoholic, but we've all got different experiences. And I think I did a pretty good job in the book of writing my experience so that it's relatable to pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
So that people can start recognizing what in their lives is not necessarily working for them. But yeah, my dream is for a random reader that I've never met to come up to me someday and be like, oh my God, your book changed my life. The challenge though is, like, the Ted 7 years ago, even if he would have picked up that book, I don't know that he would have necessarily put two and two together that that's his life that I'm writing about.
Because there's a denial stage.
Denial, I mean, you're just so, I was so enveloped in this is my life, and I'm, kind of faking my own happiness.
Yes.
That I don't know if it would resonate. So
yeah,
we'll see. You never know.
Yeah, I think the big thing too is if the book doesn't wake a person up, it's just a matter of they might have to hit their own rock bottom.
Right.
They might have to have the rug pulled out from under them on their own, and hopefully then your book will be that piece of healing that'll help guide them through as they get out of that rock bottom.
Right.
Maybe we just all need to go through it.
Yeah.
So you went on after your divorce to experience a relationship after that, and it was really cool, and I'm really grateful you kept me posted on your whole experience with that, because you finally got to experience a healthy relationship, and you got to experience a healthy breakup, which is hugely important too. Yeah,
he was just a wonderful man. About 5 months after I ended things with my ex-husband, I met this next partner of mine. We were together for 10 months, and yes, it was absolutely a healthy relationship. We weren't perfect. No relationship is perfect because, as you said, everybody brings history to each relationship that they're in. And I mean, 5 months is a decent amount of time after ending a relationship, but after 15 years, comparatively speaking, that's still pretty fresh. And
Yeah.
so I still had a lot of triggers, especially when it came to conflict within a relationship that made me really uncomfortable. I had to remember that this was a different person that I'm with now. And, throughout those 10 months, we had disagreements, but we never once raised our voices at each other.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, that made me so happy. But that didn't mean that when we had a difference of opinion on the inside, I was like, oh God, like, where is this going?
Yeah.
Kind of choking myself on the inside, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gave me an experience with what a healthy relationship looks like in terms of healthy communication, sharing emotions with each other, kind of rooting each other on, but not taking each other's journey for them.
Oh, I love that.
Just kind of
Yeah.
cheering on from the sidelines, obviously doing things together and growing our relationship together, but having our own individuality as well, which is it's critical to having a healthy relationship with another person, is to have your own individual personality, goals, everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which a lot of people forget. A lot of people, even if my marriage hadn't been toxic, we did everything together. Every minute of every day was together. We didn't have that time apart with our own friends or with our own interests. And even in a good relationship with a couple kids along really well, I think that is so important to have your own life outside of the relationship between the two of you.
Yes, I 100% agree. And that's great for the people who do have the healthy relationships and they do want to spend every waking moment together. But yeah, I guess I can speak for myself in that sense, because yeah, I'm currently in what I feel is a pretty healthy relationship because my individuality is still celebrated and free, and I still get to be Jamie as well as somebody's girlfriend and mom and all the other hats that I have to wear. And yeah, I guess it's really cool because I got to experience firsthand how being in that oneness of having that healthy relationship with myself did put me in a position to attract somebody who's kind of in the same boat, basically. And the law of attraction proved itself true once again by our meeting each other. In fact, the friend that set us up said it was just a situation where we were going to be in the same place together, and it was either I'm going to be a third wheel or I'm just going to hang out with this guy. And I was like, oh no, I'm really liking being single right now. I'm free, I'm doing my thing. And I had this idea in my head, like, if I get a boyfriend, I'm gonna have to do stuff with him all the time. I'm gonna have to do everything he wants to do. I'm not gonna have any time for myself. I'm gonna be under these certain expectations that I'm gonna have to meet. And there goes my freedom. And little by little, you lose yourself. And I don't wanna lose myself again. And I was so afraid that if I wound up with a boyfriend, there goes Jamie again, gonna lose myself because it's all gonna be about us instead of me and him. But
that's based on your historical experience.
Yes, exactly. That's what I experienced. And in fact, I was also in a very short period of time, thank God, a mentally abusive relationship with, I'm no psychologist by any means, but I would definitely peg him a narcissist. And I'm so grateful it was a short period of time, but I did get sucked in. I did get brainwashed, blindsided, whatever you want to call it, gaslighted. I went through all of those experiences and lost myself for a short enough period of time that, I was kind of diving into that darkness again. And luckily, I had enough sense, I don't know if sense is the right word because that kind of sounds a little insulting, but I had enough awareness, thank you, in me that I caught it. And I realized I don't want to put myself through this. I am not this guy's slave. I'm not this guy's expectations of what he wants a woman to be. I I don't have to put up with this.
Yeah.
And that was over. And then yes, I was really, really hardcore. Yeah, it was just an accumulation of my experiences that led me to believe that having a relationship means you lose yourself. And then it was funny because I met a guy who feels the exact same way. He absolutely will not give up his freedom. He absolutely will not lose himself again. He absolutely will not have a woman in his life who's going to tell him how to live and where to go and when to be home and all. Yeah, we're going to be our own individual people. And he didn't want a girlfriend. And I didn't want a boyfriend. And we're like, hey, this might just work.
Right.
So here we are a year and a half later. And it's really been awesome. And I don't have to be somebody I'm not. You know, I'm this weirdo who's into astrology and numerology and metaphysics and stuff like that. And hey, you know, he's into his things too. But he's interested in it. I mean, he's entertained by me, but he has no interest in changing me. He has no interest in putting that down or shaming it. And what's really cool is, like you guys had that experience too, we have not raised our voices at each other in a year and a half. And I'm at the point now in this relationship where I don't believe we ever will. And that's kind of a cool thing too, that I realized. I thought fighting was natural. I thought, and a lot of people do. A lot of people, I was like, oh, well, you're gonna fight. Fights happen. No, disagreements happen.
Right.
You're not gonna see eye to eye with a person all the time. You've got two different backgrounds and two different belief systems. It's a choice whether you scream at that person for not agreeing with you. That's where fighting comes in, and that's where fighting does not have to exist. Disagreements can be handled calmly, kindly, compassionately, where you both bring your different opinions and thoughts and belief systems to the table and share them with each other and acknowledge them. Not force each other to agree with you or not, and calmly come to whatever kind of agreement or disagree to agree or agree to disagree situation.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Fighting is something I talk about in my book as well, a lot. Because of how much that happens in toxic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And although I will say that fighting doesn't necessarily always happen, because there's the other extreme where there is no disagreements, but it's because someone is not sharing anything about their emotions. They're completely closed off because they want to avoid confrontation. Mm-hmm. But on the other spectrum, on the other end of the spectrum is, you know, there's just, I call them knockdown dragouts of, you know, the screaming at each other and et cetera. And that comes from triggers. You know, that goes back to childhood or previous experiences. You know, if one of the quotes I use in my book is, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And what that means is, if you find yourself like screaming at someone, and like I had rageful experiences in my 15-year relationship. So, you know, I can't say that I was a victim in that relationship, because I definitely played my part in the toxicity that we had.
Oh, absolutely.
But there were moments of this just rage that came upon me where it felt like an out-of-body experience, and I'm like looking down at myself, like, who is this guy who is just completely flipping out?
Yeah.
But it came from triggers. My ex would interrupt me a lot in the arguments that we would have, and the more he would interrupt, the more the bear was getting poked. And then finally I would just explode. So that's one example. But in a healthy relationship, like you said, there doesn't need to be that.
Yeah.
In fact, it doesn't happen in a truly healthy relationship where both people have a full, strong awareness of themselves and they feel safe with themselves, so that isn't necessary. You can still disagree. In fact, I encourage disagreement.
Absolutely.
Because if you're constantly disagreeing with the other person to kind of go with the flow and make them happy, then that's not necessarily good either.
You lose your sense of authenticity. Yeah. If you don't agree with something that I say, but you don't bring that to the table and you just roll along and agree with me, then who are you? But just a weird shadow of myself.
One of the key components of a healthy relationship is that both individuals continue to grow as individuals, as well as growing together as a couple. And that's one thing that disagreements do, is to encourage growth of each other, because even if it ends up being that we have this disagreement and I end up saying, you know what, your point of view makes a lot of sense, that encourages me to grow because I'm expanding. But you then have also had that experience of experiencing somebody else's point of view that only makes your side of the argument stronger.
Yeah.
So there's growth happening on both sides.
Yeah, I love it. And that's one of my favorite things about relationships. My 9-year-old, well, he's gonna be 10 soon. My 9.5-year-old is, I'm never gonna get a girlfriend. He's just anti-relationships across the board. And I remind him, but I remind him that relationships are so important, even the toxic ones. You grow and learn, you learn and grow so much in those experiences. You learn so much about yourself, and especially when you navigate a toxic relationship and get yourself out of it, and then look back on it and reflect, and then you know who I want to be and who I want to be with the next go round.
Yep.
It's that constant moving forward and growing. I did have a question though. So those moments of rage that you talked about, and you kind of referenced it as those rageful moments that you experienced within your toxic relationship.
Yep.
How would you advise a person out of those rageful moments in a healthy relationship? And for example, I, as a mother, still have those moments of rage where I just lose my shit on my kid that I've had to tell the same thing or ask him to do the same thing at least 12 times, and he's not listening, and he's defying, all the whole things, and you just blow your stack after a while. You cannot handle it anymore. And I'm sure there's a lot of relationships, intimate relationships, romantic relationships people are in where that same thing happens. Even though it's a healthy relationship and you're both, decent human beings who are, have each other's best interests in mind, you still have triggers. You're still going to bring things to the table. And some people haven't done the work that you've done on yourself. And, I've done the work in my own relationship. Yeah, he doesn't push my buttons in a way that makes me go into a fit of rage. I have no reason to scream at him, and he's had no reason to scream at me. But we have kind of lost our shit and screamed at the kids. And that is something I do want to work on. I want to grow as a parent to where I can have that same healthy relationship with my child, even though they're going to push my buttons and defy me and all the other things that go with it. But how would you give a person in a healthy relationship, a healthy romantic relationship, where they still have those fits of rage because those triggers are hit?
Yeah, I think the quickest tip I can give someone in those situations that's easy to, maybe not easy to apply, but it's easy to remember, is the beauty of the pause. Take a deep, if you just want to snap at somebody, take 3 seconds to take a deep breath, and I guarantee that maybe that rageful emotion might not completely dissipate or go away, but it's going to be lessened. Give yourself time to react. I think a lot of us, ironically, as I'm trying to find the words to say, we feel like we have to immediately respond to someone versus taking the time to just a few seconds to think about what we want to say.
Yeah.
And react.
Yeah. That reaction is that is a good point. Reaction does play a huge role in a lot of arguments, or being able to avoid arguments.
Yeah, and in relationships, I feel like if those emotions are bubbling up, I definitely would not recommend ending the argument and never going back to it, but a 15-second or even 15-minute pause to take a walk or something and then come back to finishing the discussion, I think can be really helpful, because when we're in that high emotional state, we can say things that we might regret.
Yeah, that's really good advice, and definitely something to work on for a lot of people. So you've experienced a relationship since the toxic one. Have you been in any other relationships since then?
So I ended the 10-month relationship.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask if you wanted to share about how that ended, because I felt that was a really healthy breakup too, and that's an important component.
Yeah, one of the lessons I learned from that is that healthy relationships can have healthy breakups or healthy endings too. we ended things because there were some things that I was starting to feel uncomfortable about and didn't necessarily feel like were the best fit anymore. I don't necessarily want to go into detail about that, but let's just say that the concerns that I had about him were very different from the concerns that ultimately ended my, the marriage that I was in. But I think that's also a testament to how much work I had done in the year plus that had followed my end of my marriage, because the things that I realized wouldn't work for me have changed a lot. I tolerated quite a bit for 15 years and finally ended that. And the experience with that next partner was, 99% wonderful. But that 1% still just was not the right fit for me, energetically speaking. So since ending that, I have entered the dating world. I downloaded Tinder for the first time. So that's actually a fun fact about me, is up until 3-4 months ago, I had never dated. I went from one serious relationship to the next. First you, and then my ex-husband, and then my 10-month relationship, with no time in between to kind of play the field, have conversations with different people. So now I'm really creating this space where I can have friendships with people that may or may not lead to a relationship. I'm having many conversations that may or may not fizzle out. The dating apps are quite an interesting experience, that's for sure.
Yes, please don't stop sharing some of the things you've seen on Tinder.
I've had a few interesting ones. But what I found is, because Gay Man Thriving is an organization that I work with very closely. It's the coaching organization that I'm part of and very intimately involved in. And I've made a number of friends through those programs, and a lot of them struggle with the dating sites as well. And a lot of them are trying to find happiness through a relationship. So I'm like, well, that's step one.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Gotta find happiness in you first.
Right. But they're also, they take a lot of things personally when a guy ghosts them or says something really hurtful or just kind of ignorant. The comments that they get from strangers on the internet.
Anybody does that too, and I'm just going to interject real quick because that's something I really like about your book, that even though you had an experience as a man with a man, relationship problems don't have gender.
Right.
It's across the board. So that happens too. In any relationship across the board, people will take things personally and get all butthurt about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I like that your book does that, and oh my gosh, all these problems are just common.
I tried to write my book from the perspective of any relationship.
Yeah,
I certainly share a little bit about my experience of sexuality and coming out, but in terms of the relationship aspect, I wrote it in a way that could work for straight, gay, and anything in between.
Yeah, you did great with that, I think.
But what I was going to say as far as my dating experience is, because of all the work I've done, these interactions that I'm having on the dating apps, I'm able, not to say I'm 100% there, but I'm able to take things much less personally than an average person can or does. And it's because of all that work I've done to know that when a person is just completely stop talking to me, or maybe says something that is like kind of furrows my brow a little bit, it's not about me.
Yeah. They're saying what they're saying and doing what they're doing based on their experiences and their feelings. Yeah, and you're not going to be compatible with everybody.
Right.
And it's okay. Which actually, I was going to kind of segue into that next. That, do you believe there is one person out there that you're going to find a happily ever after with?
Me personally?
Yeah, I'm asking your opinion.
Well, I mean,
or
you're asking about for me, in my life, or in general.
I think I'm kind of asking it for the general public, because there's a lot of people out there who are looking for the one. Yeah. They're looking for their soulmate or their twin flame or whatever title you want to put on it. They're looking for that.
I definitely believe in soulmates and soul companions.
But not a one.
Not a single person.
Yeah, that's
I
going to
definitely believe that the universe creates things in our lives in a way to bring certain people together at a certain time. one specific person at a certain time, and then later another specific person at a specific time.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe that there's one perfect person for everyone out there. I mean, there's what, billions of people on Earth?
Billions, yeah.
Like, how's that work?
Right.
I definitely believe that, going back to what we said about the law of attraction, like attracts like, and it's about that energetic attraction that brings people together. You know, I may meet somebody in months to a year that I end up being with forever. I don't know, but I feel like in my next relationship, I will have the open mind and will definitely express this to the other person that I don't know if I'm necessarily gonna be with that person forever and only that person. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all about an open mind at this point. Like, I'm open
that.
to kind of all possibilities, because in my past, I tried to have every moment of every day and every situation planned out, which never worked for me, by the way.
Doesn't really work.
And so now I'm doing the opposite of that, where
Cool.
I'm trying, I hate the word try, I'm trying to eliminate the word try from my, I'm trying to eliminate
You're trying
the
to
word try.
eliminate the word try?
I hear what
How's
you
that
just
working
said.
out for you?
Yeah. I am making a more conscious effort to be more present in my everyday life.
Oh,
It's been
that's
a
so
challenge
cool.
for me because of this nonstop community of voices that talks up here. But living in the present is just so important for so many
Absolutely.
reasons.
Yeah, I love that open-mindedness that you're carrying into whatever possibility of the next relationship is. And I think that is actually that's one of my favorite things about the relationship that I'm in right now, is it was always a joke when we got together in July of 2019 and we started thinking about, oh, maybe we'll go on this hiking trip in September. And we're like, oh my gosh, do you think we'll still be together by September? Oh, we were together in September. We started talking about Christmas. Oh my gosh, do you think we'll actually be together yet at Christmas? And then the time came and we're like, well, maybe next year. Oh my God, next year? We're not, that's too far out. We're not gonna talk about next year. And we still talk like that a year and a half in, and we both have this attitude of, I don't know if we'll be together. If we're together forever, okay. If we're not, whatever reason brought us apart, it was a valid reason. And I'm so appreciative of the time that we've got together. But with that attitude of not planning a future together, we have so much freedom, and it plants us in the present. We're just living in the moment, day to day, and it's such a freeing feeling. I've been working with anxiety a lot lately with my life coaching clients, and it's amazing how so much of that anxiety can be alleviated if you just learn presence. Yes. Mindfulness, be here right now. The past doesn't exist and the future doesn't exist because it's not happening right now. The only thing that's happening right now is now. And I love that about our relationship, that we don't have to plan a future. And, we entertain ideas. It's kind of fun to talk about, like, when the kids are a little bit older and we don't have a circus to deal with like we do right now. If it's financially plausible, maybe we'll entertain the idea of living together, but him having his own space and me having my own space has been so freeing too. I'm a guest at his house, he's a guest at my house. If he wants to be at my house, that's his choice. If I want to be at his house, that's my choice. It's our choice. It's a choice for us to be together every single day. And it takes away that feeling of being trapped. And I've been kind of exploring this thought too. I feel like there's a lot of relationships that go toxic because of an underlying psychological feeling of being trapped. Whether I signed this marriage certificate with this person, I have to be with them for the rest of my life. And that sounded really good in the moment in those first 5 years we were together, but oh my God, I am so sick of how he leaves his underwear laying around, or I'm so sick of the way he talks to his mother, or whatever, different issues across the board. I'm really sick of this unwavering mindset that he's stuck in, and I don't want to live with this for the rest of my life. Oh, but I signed this marriage certificate, and I can't leave. I'm stuck in it. I had that. I went through that. I had signed that marriage certificate. I made this commitment. I have to stay with this man, and he really wants cows, and I'm not a farm girl, and I can't do this, but I said I would. So I'm just
Right.
using a really light example.
I
But
I think that goes back to what I was saying before about the trajectory of two people being together. But in a lot of situations, like the energy just doesn't match anymore after a period of time. But because people sign that piece of paper, they feel confined to that relationship. Now, I want to clarify. I believe it's important to continue to work on a relationship if there are challenges.
absolutely.
I don't think we should just up and throw in the towel. But if there are bigger, broader challenges that make you realize that you're not a great match for your partner anymore, why be unhappy?
Yeah, why put yourself through that? I know, and I think that too. And I'm grateful that he and we did work. We went to counseling shortly after our son was born, and we worked on our relationship. And in the time being, it did work. We had a good relationship with each other. There were still a lot of things within the relationship that I knew I wasn't happy about, but they weren't pressing and in the forefront until later. And we went back to counseling to try to work on it again. And yeah, we drew the conclusion that this, unless we completely change our personalities, this isn't going to work. And exactly, why continue to be unhappy in a situation? And yeah, it's that I have a lot of qualms about that piece of paper in the courthouse. And I try to tell people that, but everyone's comeback at me is, oh, well, you only feel that way because you were in a marriage that didn't work out. So now you're just against marriage across the board. Like, I'm not against an idea of a long-term committed relationship. I'm not against that. And there are plenty of people out there that I think can last forever, that can walk that path in alignment with each other, wanting the same things and having the same goals and supporting each other on that journey till the day that they die. Why do you gotta go and sign a piece of paper in the courthouse to state your love for each other or to prove that that commitment is there? And yeah, I feel like I actually had somebody say one time that as soon as you commit to that marriage, you sign that piece of paper, you've put love in a cage. And I love how she said that, because I do think there's an underlying psychology of that piece of paper that you sign and that commitment that you make before God and your family and everybody. Yeah. All right, I gotta stay with this person forever. I have to love this person. I have to. Yeah, and once you start forcing love is no longer unconditional.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, and I feel like I've noticed unconditional love is lacking, and that's basically love without conditions. Right. I'll only love you if you fold your socks a certain way. I'll only love you if you put the toilet seat down. I'll only love you if, I'm using very light examples, but so many people will put conditions on love where they want their partner to fit this example of what they think their perfect partner is. Yep. And they want to control them and change them, and that's just a recipe for disaster.
Rather than accepting them for who they are.
Absolutely.
That is basically the definition of unconditional love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Accepting them for who they are at any given moment, so as things change, you're continuing to love them.
Absolutely.
No matter what.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm experiencing in my current relationship too. Is he perfect? I don't know. What is perfect, first of all? But I don't know. I guess there's a few things that aren't 100% what I want in my perfect man, if that perfect man exists. But I will absolutely not try to force him to be that person that needs to fit all those perfect characteristics in my book, because then he's not being himself. And in my relationship, any relationship that I'm in, I want the person that I'm with to be their authentic self. And I'm probably not the perfect girl for him. I can use one example. He likes country music and I absolutely cannot stand it. He probably would enjoy being with a girl who likes country music that he can enjoy with.
Giddy up.
But he's not trying to change me.
Right.
You know, he won't blast it in front of me or around me or anything like that. Yeah, he's got plenty of diverse taste and it's not a problem.
Right.
But, you know, I'm not going to go to concerts with him. So, you know, that's a very light example of something that, and he's not trying to force it on me. He's not trying to force me to like what he likes, and I'm not going to try to force him to like what I like. And I think there's too many times that happens.
Yeah, I think a lot of couples expect their partner to change for themselves, and in a lot of situations, the partner does try to change themselves for the sake of the other person, and that just builds resentment.
It does. I definitely experienced that firsthand. I carried a lot of resentment with me because I actually felt this way about marriage before I got married, but my ex-husband really drove a point home that he thinks I felt that way because I grew up in a marriage or witnessing a marriage that wasn't my idea of an ideal marriage. And I was like, oh, well, maybe you're right. And I did. I changed myself to fit his expectations of his perfect woman. And I wasn't me anymore. Like, I didn't want to stay in the Midwest. I want to move down to the Southwest. And he convinced me that no, staying in the Midwest is what's best for me. And I went to school here and got a job here, started my business here. And the next step was, oh, well, you have to have kids. That's the next thing you're supposed to mark off your list. You have to have kids. Oh, okay. And I feel like I got pregnant way before. I still to this day wonder if I ever would have had kids if I had stood my ground. I think I would have eventually become a mother, but it was way too early for me to be okay with it. And that's when things kind of started spiraling out of control, that I'm living somebody else's dream. I'm living somebody else's life. What's Jamie's dream? What's Jamie's life?
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, yeah, they try to change themselves. And then, yes, resentment is a very poisonous emotion.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, now as we're talking, it's like I can imagine from the viewer standpoint who might be in a marriage where they're not so happy, or they've kind of created this life for themselves where they're like, yeah, I'm not happy, but I don't want to change anything. I think the message I would give just to someone who's in that situation is you can make small changes in your life just by starting to do the work on yourself and become a happier person, and the people around you will automatically change. Like, if I make changes for myself to become a healthier, happier person, just by default, the people around me will become different people.
Yes.
And your life will get better.
I so 100% agree. And I love that awareness is coming more and more into the forefront. I just find it so funny that we went into 2020 last year and everyone's New Year's resolution was, I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to put me first now. Oh, well, the universe really forced us to take a look at that from a different angle, didn't it?
Right.
And I remember a lot of people using the analogy of the oxygen mask and the airplane, where they tell you, put your oxygen mask on first before you try to help anybody else. Because you need to make sure you've got the oxygen to keep yourself alive so that you can help somebody else. And that, you know, what you just said too is a perfect example of how you cannot be of any good to another person if you haven't taken care of yourself first. And just by simply being a happier, healthier version of you, without even trying to change anybody else or affect anybody else or inspire anybody else, just simply making those changes within yourself is going to shine that light, that it's going to impact everybody within your life in a positive way without even trying.
Yeah, I think that message is becoming more and more mainstream and commonplace for people to understand. But I think there are a lot of people who still think that putting ourselves first is selfish.
Yes.
But what I've learned is there's a very big difference between selfish and self-loving.
Yes.
It's so important to put our own needs first, because by doing that, then we have the ability to take care of other people's needs.
Absolutely. The big difference between selfish and self-loving is selfish is, I'm going to do what's right for me, even if it hurts you, even if it screws you over.
Yeah.
Self-loving is, I'm going to do what's best for me so that I can be a better person for you and everybody else in my life.
Yeah, what I've learned is when you're doing the most loving thing for yourself, by default, you're also doing the most loving thing for everyone around you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. So, is there anything else you want to talk about or add? Anything else you want to share about your book?
I guess I could just give like a brief overview of kind of what's contained in the book in addition to what we've already kind of talked about.
Yeah.
So again, it's called Healthy Me, Happy We, and the journey of the book mirrors the journey that I've had myself. So the first half of the book really talks about what unhealthy relationships look like, from both an abuse as well as an addiction perspective. And that addiction perspective also includes codependency. I was very much in a codependent place. I still have flickers of codependency that linger in my life now that I'm working on recovering from. Sharing my personal experience as well as pulling in kind of some general concepts that I'm hoping will help the readers identify the unhealthy aspects of their relationships that might currently exist. Then I talk about the healing journey, both my own as well as what can look like for other people, to both heal from the unhealthy relationships that we may have with other people, as well as what we've been doing with ourselves for the last however many years we've been alive. Talking about those childhood traumas, talking about experiences that you've had in relationships with other people, as well as kind of that inner dialogue as to how you talk to yourself, which is really important. And then by having those healing experiences, we can then invite healthy relationships with other people. And I talk a lot about kind of what those look like, various aspects of, kind of characteristics that we would ideally look for in a healthy, happy relationship with other people.
So it's kind of like some guidelines for, say a single person picks up this book.
Yep.
Yeah, it can be a really helpful tool for them to know how to cultivate that relationship with themselves to be healthy, and also what kinds of red flags to look for or what kinds of good things to look for within any relationships they find themselves in the future.
Right. So going back to that quote that I can't remember the exact wording for, but it's about, instead of looking for that perfect person, it's about becoming that perfect person. And then by default, then you can attract that person to your life.
Yeah. And I think even take that extra layer out of it, that you're even trying to attract that perfect person into your life.
It's kind of like a bonus, right?
Yeah.
The first priority is ourselves.
Yes.
Like me right now, I'm not looking for a relationship. Dating's fun, whatever. I believe that by continuing to do this work on myself, it will, not necessarily a Prince Charming moment, because I don't want to talk about a fairy tale, but that person, I believe, will appear in one way or another at just the right time, because of the man that I'm becoming.
Yeah. And it'll be that perfect person for that moment too.
Right.
And
maybe not forever.
Yeah, maybe not forever. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, back to where you said, there's soulmates and soul companions and stuff like that. I believe you and I were soulmates, are soulmates.
Absolutely.
And, in the time that we had a relationship together on the level that we did, that was exactly what you and I needed in that moment in our lives.
Yep.
And then the relationships we've been in since then were with, your ex-husband, I think, was in a sense a soulmate to you.
Absolutely.
Because look at what he brought into your life. Look what kind of riches and abundance and amazingness that came out of you. Would you have discovered all of that if it hadn't been for what you went through with him?
No, and that's precisely why he is mentioned in the acknowledgments of my book.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to him for the experience that he brought me. It was not fun going through it, but I'm the happiest I've ever been, and it's because I've been in that relationship to have the contrast and to have the experience to know what unhappiness looks like.
Yeah.
So that now I know what I've got when I got it.
Right. And I think any relationship can serve that purpose too, because like I said about my ex-husband, he doesn't hold a candle to yours. And I mentioned him in the acknowledgments of my book too, because I am the person I am today because of that relationship that I went through. And I mentioned multiple other relationships in there too, people who have helped me along through the journey. And yeah, I wouldn't change a thing about anything that I went through, because the person I am today is badass enough that they're really proud of the person that I've become, and I'm so happy that I had all the experience that I did to lead me to this point.
Yeah, so many, when I share my story, people are, I would say 9 times out of 10, the response I get is, "Oh, I'm so sorry you went through that." And I just smile. I understand where that's coming from, but I just smile and I say, you know what, I'm grateful for that experience.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I definitely don't want sympathy for any of the hardships I've been through in my life. You know, yeah, I always go back to my traumatic birth experience with my son, but yeah, I mean, while I wouldn't wish that on anybody, and while I wouldn't want to go back to those emotions that I went through, I am grateful that I went through it. I am grateful because of the person that I became. And I think it's so important for everybody to get to a point in their life where they can look back on their traumas or their challenges or their rock bottoms or their abuse or anything that they went through in their life. If you can get to a point where you can look back on that and thank it, then yeah, you made it. Good job.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, anything else that you want to mention?
No, so just to wrap up, so I can be found, my website, my Facebook, and my Instagram are all tedsmith.life. So my website is tedsmith.life.
L-I-V-E, right?
L-I-F-E.
L-I-F-E, thank you. Glad we pointed that out.
And then Facebook and Instagram are both at tedsmith.life. So follow me. I'll be sharing some updates about my book, Healthy Me Happy Me, comes out on April 15th, and I'm very excited about it.
Yay, that's awesome. I'm so proud of you and excited for you.
Proud of you too. Thanks for having me today. This has been great.
Yes, you're welcome. All of our links to our profiles on our websites and anything we have to offer will be in the description, so click that. Make sure you like and subscribe, and thank you so much for being part of this. All right, until next time. Thanks, everybody.